What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm posing the question, what the hell happened to hand traps? Now, obviously hand traps didn't go anywhere, but if you guys took a look at a lot of the deck profiles from YCS Sydney, you'll notice that we've been going in a very interesting direction and that hand traps are actually falling out of favor. So in this video, I kind of wanted to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about to build a premise for this argument, but then also discuss why we're in this current predicament and what this could mean for the format moving forward. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss a single upload. And if you really love the content that I produce on this channel, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because it's thanks to people like Darkest that I'm able to bring you this content on a daily basis. So if you're interested, hit the join button down below or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So I wanted to start off this video by showing you guys all the deck lists that I was able to find over on Carloncho Store's Facebook page. They're a wonderful resource, not only just for TCG deck profiles for main events, but also for the OCG as well. So I'd highly recommend checking them out and giving them a like on Facebook. They're not sponsoring me to say that. I just love that they have all these deck lists up and at a very fast pace as well. But starting off, just take a look at this top 32 Sky Striker deck from YCS Sydney. And if you can see here, you know, this deck is only playing 5 hand traps. You have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and then 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Now, obviously, in the side deck, there are going to be more hand traps coming out. You've got the Ghost Ogres, the Ghost Reapers, also Lancia. Lancia is a little bit more narrow, though. But, I mean, yeah, that's just so crazy. Remember not too long ago, we were at a time where Sky Striker was playing like 9 to 12 hand traps. They were playing the Ash Blossoms, the Ghost Bells, the Ghost Ogres, and even the Impermanence, just maxing out, making over 25% of their deck hand traps. And now we've gone down to this. And it's not like this is just a random anomaly. I mean, I'm going to go through a ton of different decks here. You're going to see, look at this top 4 Altergeist list by Peter Mitro. I mean, this deck has no hand traps. I mean, you do see hand traps in the side deck. You've got Ghost Reaper, Ash Blossom, Impermanence, and Ghost Spell. You have an entire suite of them, but not a single hand trap being played in the main deck. Isn't that just bizarre? Again, moving forward, look at the YCS Sydney deck profile of Yajima, excuse me, who played Burning Abyss. Again, Burning Abyss, you know, hand traps actually fit kind of nice into this deck because they happen to be level 3, so you can actually use them as Xyz fodder if you don't end up using them as hand traps. But how many hand traps do you see in this deck? I see a total of 2 Ash Blossom in total. And again, there's a Gamma package in the side deck, but that only comes out to 5. That isn't really that much. Again, a top 16 Goki Warrior, you know, Gumblar, Rongominiad Turbo deck, you know, one of those Dark Warrior, just Warrior-centric decks that we've seen before. No hand traps. I mean, again, Reapers in the side deck and Lancia as well, but no hand traps in the main. You've got another Trickstar deck, Trickstar Sky Striker top 32 deck profile here, and this is a deck that if you're gonna go down the Trickstar route, you're usually just piling on the hand traps because that's one of your main forms of defense. But again, what do we see here? 3 Ash and 3 Impermanence. Trickstar Sky Striker is opting not even to play Droll and Lockbird, which is honestly one of the reasons to play Trickstar, because you have the Droll Reincarnation combo, which again isn't like the best combo, but it's still degenerate and can honestly win you games you probably have no right winning. There's also this Bubble 7-3 ABC deck list here. Again, all I see is 3 Ash Blossom and 3 Impermanence. I mean, this just, the count on some of these is so low. And then even when you go to the second place deck profile from Jesse Cotton, the Danger Thunder Dragon deck, not a single hand trap in the main deck to be found. There's Gammas in the side deck and Lancia as well, a couple copies of Impermanence, but nothing in the main deck. And then just wrapping it off with the first place deck, there are some Ash Blossoms, there are some Impermanence, but again, we're not seeing nearly the number of hand traps we have seen in the past. So pretty much going based off of this, I wanted to kind of just posit, why is this happening? Because when you look at the format, not really a lot has changed in the past couple of months compared to where we were before, but there's one key factor, and that is the fact that FTKs have been put in check for the most part. I mean, if you look, yeah, Slash Draw FTK is still running around just to a minor extent, and I'd say the closest thing to like an FTK we have that's kind of still in abundance is the Rongominiad Turbo deck, which technically isn't an FTK. It's kind of just like answer my board, otherwise I win. So they get a chance to play at least, but they're most likely not winning if Rongominiad hits the board. There's also more fringe FDK decks like Gem Knight FDK and things like that running around, but that's not really, you know, popular enough to really worth mention too much. You know, these decks have pretty much just fallen by the wayside. And when you look at the main meta decks, you know, your Thunder Dragons, your Sky Striker, your Altergeist, these decks play a very different game, because let's start off with Sky Striker. Sky Striker's had the highest representation at these tournaments, and you know, Sky Striker isn't really going to be killing you on either turn 1 or turn 2, so that's not what Sky Striker does. It's a very control-oriented deck. Its game plan is to run you out of resources, and yeah, it has access to like Borolo Dragon and multiple Widow Anchors, so it has the potential to output damage, but more often than not, it's going to be controlling the board and just wanting to make sure that if you run out of resources, that's how the deck's going to win. It doesn't matter if it's poking you for 1,500 every single turn, maybe 3,000 if they're lucky, but that's just how the deck plays. And when you look at the hand traps going against a deck like Sky Striker, what are they really doing? I mean, yeah, something like Ash Blossom on the very first copy of Engage played could honestly just end their turn if they have no other way to access Ray, or maybe a well-timed Ghost Ogre on something like Multi-Roll, and I guess Droll and Lockbird to a minor extent could be good if your deck can pretty much OTK them on the following turn, but ultimately, there aren't really that many useful hand traps against a deck like Sky Striker, because yeah, you're getting 1-for-1s in terms of card economy, but you're not exactly getting anywhere, because Sky Striker is able to just generate so much advantage off of each one of its cards, multi-roll essentially, that even though, yeah, you're only trading a 1-for-1, you're really just falling behind in card advantage, because a card like Ash Blossom or Droll or any of these other hand traps really doesn't do enough. I guess Ogre could be made an argument for, just because hitting multi-roll can be so key, but again, it's one of just like many hand traps that pretty much, when you look at just the array of what's available, it doesn't really do a whole lot. And the same thing goes for a deck like Altergeist. Altergeist is another very control-based deck, and again, very similarly to Sky Striker, this is a deck that isn't going to kill you on turn 1 or 2. Altergeist wants to snowball, start generating tons and tons of advantage until it basically has everything like its protocol set up. You know, you've got stuff like your Hextias in place, and once it gets to that point, again, it's just going to control the entire game so that you don't have any resources to play, and even though it's going to hit you with monsters that may not have the highest form of attack, it's still going to ultimately win if it's able to dilute you out of card advantage entirely. But again, when you look at the array of hand traps that are available, what's really gonna be impactful? Not really too much. Yeah, Ash Blossom can be useful like in like 1 or 2 very specific instances. I guess Ogre on something like Spoofing could be pretty good, but when you look at the hand traps that are available, none of these are impactful enough to really make the difference, or they don't have that same impact of doing something like Ash Blossoming a copy of Isolde in something like a Warrior deck. That can just flat out end a turn for most of those decks, but none of these hand traps do that against these more control-oriented decks, so that way you're not really gaining much advantage out of it, so you're starting to see hand traps fall out of favor. And then you have Thunder Dragon. Danger Thunder Dragon especially is the new beast that we have to worry about. Again, when you look at what hand traps are available compared to like what Danger Thunder Dragon does, are you really getting anywhere? I mean, Ghost Ogre pretty much does absolutely nothing. Ash Blossom can stop like a couple of specific cards, and Ghost Spell kind of enters the discussion here, because Ghost Spell can also touch a few cards here and there as well. But again, are those cards that these hand traps can stop strong enough to really warrant running these hand traps? And I think for the current situation of where the meta stands, I don't think that it is, and I think that's why for YCS Sydney you started to see the hand trap slowly fall out of favor. Now, there is a caveat to this, because this could have been specific to Australia's metagame entirely, but I think, especially when you're looking at how the meta has progressed up to this point, I don't think this is a one-time instance. But when you do look forward into the future of how this might affect the future metagame, more specifically stuff like YCS Chicago and other events like that, maybe regionals in your local area, I think this is actually an opportunity for combo decks to make a comeback, because think about it. If all the main decks, or at least the decks you're expecting to see the most in Swiss, are going to be playing only like 3 hand traps, maybe 6 at the most in the main deck, you could play something like Rongominiad Turbo, or you could play like a Dark Warrior Danger deck that's going to Gumblar your opponent for 6, or any of these combo-oriented decks that either have some sort of pseudo FDK or essentially are going to like win you the game game, so to speak, on turn 1, and you're gonna feel pretty good about it because you can play your tools like your Call by the Grave, like your Magical Midbreaker Fields, and all these things to stop hand traps, but ultimately, they need to actually draw those hand traps, and if they don't have a high hand trap count going into game 1, that's just gonna be a free win for you, and it's not like these decks are incapable of going second. These decks can very well OTK through multiple forms of negation just because they are that powerful. So I think this is an opportunity for combo decks to have a sort of resurgence in the metagame if people predict that this trend of low hand trap count is going to continue. So it's definitely something to be cognizant of if you plan on going to something like YCS Chicago or anything like that, because if that holds true, it's going to make for a very interesting competitive environment to see, are we going to stick with the low hand trap count? Are people going to be nervous that there's a low hand trap count, expecting a lot of combo decks, so they're going to overcompensate by playing more? Yeah, you've got hand traps in your side deck for games 2 and 3, but when it comes to these combo decks, you know, if they win the die roll, they are in a much more dominating position than if they lose it. So, you know, just some food for thought, something I noticed from looking over all of the deck lists from YCS Sydney. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this trend of lower hand trap counts going into the game. I mean, are you happy that we're seeing less hand traps and that there's somewhat more interactivity and games are being somewhat longer than they're used to? Or do you prefer the much faster format where we have to play like 12 hand traps in the main deck? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.